outlook for 2022. So thank you for joining. If you're in the live room, type into the chat, where you're calling in from, and, all these different things of what's been going on and the topics you want to talk about here. Again, let us know where you're calling in from, what vertical you're operating in, and anything maybe you're looking forward to in 2022. And then we'll get started here at the top of the hour. All right, I'm very excited for this. Good deal. All righty, live stream is good. Beautiful. All right. So we'll wait here for a few more minutes, let the room fill up, and then we'll get started again at the top of the hour. It's great to be back. It's great to see everybody, all the good stuff that's been going on the past year. The cannabis industry has been very, very, very exciting. Lots to talk about. But again, if you're watching the live stream, you can skip ahead a little bit here. Or sorry, if you're watching the replay, you can skip ahead a few minutes as well. Again, we're just kind of letting the room fill up here. But again, very excited. Lots of good information to cover. Been doing a lot of research on, what to look for as well in the coming, year for cannabis. So, all right, well, it is the top of the hour here, so let's go ahead and get started. But before we do, I need to let you know that the information contained in this presentation is meant for guidance purposes only and not meant as professional, legal, or tax advice. Further, it does not give any personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So with that out of the way, let's dive right into the agenda for today's chat here. So first, I'm going to go over some big industry news and developments over the past 30 days or so, covering licensing and regulations, legal updates, tax, finance, and M&A. Then I'll cover some of the big things that happened in 2021. It's very easy to kind of forget about things. It's a very long time, but we're also going to look at, what is the kind of outlook for 2022? And finally, we'll take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please drop them down into the chat on whatever channel you're on. I'll get to the questions when I have some time. And then also, if you need any help with any finance or accounting related help with your cannabis business, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Beautiful. We're seeing Big Mill Productions is in here. Very excited to see more people filling in. Excellent. Good to see you, Derek. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. All right, so let's go ahead and hop right in here for the tax updates for the past 30 days. There's just one update, and it's a very important one, and it's going to kind of signal maybe what we see in 2022. But San Francisco's Board of Supervisors unanimously approves suspending a citywide cannabis tax. Wait, a city is stopping a tax from coming into play? That's amazing news. So the San Francisco Board of Supervisors in late November, early December, unanimously approved an ordinance to suspend the cannabis businesses tax through the end of next year in an attempt to kind of curb the illegal sales. There's a dual market, a very prevalent dual market in California. Now, hopefully, this suspension of the tax can mitigate some of the impacts of that. Now, according to Supervisor Mandelman, suspending the city's business tax through the end of 2022 would help support legal cannabis retailers. He argued that dispensaries struggle, again, to compete with these illegal cannabis sellers who pay no taxes. He also said that legislation will help create a better working conditions for the cannabis workers, as well as improve the quality of the cannabis in the market. When operators have more money to put into the business, they can create better product. Now, the goal is to present to the Board of Supervisors with a set of recommendations and tax rates and structures and hopefully implement those in 2023. Now, why is this so important? Obviously, no one wants to pay any more tax than they're legally obligated to, but what's really obvious now is that regulators are waking up to the facts that their tax scheme has totally derailed legal market operations. It sounds maybe good on paper, but in practice, it's not performing the way they wanted it to. Now, this pause on implementing new taxes is what I believe and what our company believes is a move in the right direction. Many politicians ran on the tax cannabis to fix the city type of platform. And, you're going to tax the legal market out of existence if you tax and tax and tax and tax and tax. Legal businesses are nearly taxed out of profit due to it being a controlled substance. And taxes are the biggest issue for people that are currently operating a cannabis business. Hands down, no questions about it. Those taxes put pressure not on just the operators, but also on the consumers. If you have to pay 50% more to go to a legal shop, you may think twice if you're going to actually go there, or if you're just going to call up your cousin who's going to come and just deliver it to you and, hang out with you. So taxes, again, they keep this dual market of illegal and illegal legal and illegal cannabis running parallel, but the power is really in that illegal market because they don't have to pay any taxes. Now, watch out. I've seen some articles and kind of some of these blog posts coming out and Facebook posts coming out that some people are calling operators to withhold taxes from the government until the government or any other agency kind of steps up to protect the businesses from the string of robberies we're seeing, or even simply just collapsing under the financial pressure of an illegal market. Now, please do not do this. Do not withhold any taxes from the government. There is no way to use the "I have it in escrow for you," or, "Don't worry, we have the money, but we're not going to pay you until you help us." There are enough people that are willing to play ball that you're going to lose your license, you're going to have penalties assessed on you, and your life will become even more difficult compared to if you just paid your taxes and create a better financial hygiene for your business. Because there are some cannabis businesses out there that are thriving, that are mom and pop and are paying their taxes. It's just many factors to it, but don't shoot yourself in the foot by not paying your taxes. So that's tax update number 1 for this past year or this past month here. Let's go into some legal updates. I only have 2 of those. I really want to get into the 2021 kind of summary and 2022 outlook. So let's go here. The legal updates. MedMen, they've prevailed in their lawsuit against their former CFO, James Parker. Now, for context, in 2019, Parker filed a lawsuit against MedMen alleging wrongful termination, breach of contract, and retaliation, and was seeking over $20 million in damages. Now, that CFO, James Parker here, he was accusing MedMen that he's owed $24 million due to provisions in his employment agreement. That'll come up in a moment here. Now, he also accused the leadership was being reckless with investor cash when money was low in the business. We've talked at lengths, at least during 2020, about how MedMen was pretty much, burning cash and has huge liabilities, and how are they going to actually survive? They did a great turnaround, but again, this case here, they were being reckless with investor cash when money was low, or accused of that. There was also that there was a toxic work environment, including trafficking cannabis across state lines. Huge no-no, especially for a public cannabis company. Now, the founders and MedMen team accused the CFO that he didn't have a real good grip on the finances of the company, but he didn't get fired for that. And they accused him of breaching his fiduciary duty when he negotiated his own employment contract and quit without proper notice. So he made that big paycheck in there for $24 million, negotiated himself, and then quit on them without proper notice. Now, the result of the case, MedMen was cleared by a jury in the wrongful discharge suit. The jury found that Parker breached his contract, breached his fiduciary duty, and his duty of loyalty. He misappropriated trade secrets and committed conversion, but they said there was no harm or damage resulting from his misconduct. All in all, it's a huge win for MedMen, the business, and a kick in the mouth for the former CFO, who wouldn't want to get $24 million. But hey, if the court says you're not going to get it, you could file an appeal, but we'll see how that shakes out. But why is this important? Why are we just talking about this and not just beating down on these kinds of things? It's important because it's interesting to look at how quickly a cannabis company, especially one that's operating at the top of the mountain, how quickly they can tumble and become completely unraveled from the people on the inside. It's not like the consumers did this. This was an implosion from the inside. Now, the cannabis industry can kind of seem like a lawless place, essentially a wild, wild west. But that charade can only go on for so long until the legal system comes in, clears all the debris, and looks at the mess through their lens. Now, if you're going to go into those bigger deals, you need to have legal representation. Do not negotiate anything on your own. You should have a lawyer. You should probably have some type of financial advisor or a CPA helping you. And when you sign up to do something, you need to actually perform on that contract, or there's going to be remedies in there that are probably not in your favor. So that's the first legal update. And, it's interesting to watch MedMen. It's a case study that's evolving day by day. And I think it's a beautiful thing to watch. All right, Denali Accountants, my gal Sharon is here. It's great to see you. Great to see you. Put more stuff into the chat here. Send the link out to your friends. We'd love to have more people watching this. There's going to be a lot of great information coming in the next half of this presentation here. But the second legal update I want to hit on, and I'm not going to go too detailed into this one, but you've seen likely on the news or in your cannabis Facebook or LinkedIn groups, there's been an increased amount of robberies. I think there's been like 30 of them in the Bay Area, if not more, at dispensaries and other businesses, ones that are not even listed on the BCC or the Cannabis Control website. These are very like kind of off the grid type of things. Now, I'm not going to, again, dive into the deep details of the robberies and who's doing them and the police response to it. But I want you to understand it can be a very scary time for operators. So what can you do as a cannabis business operator to protect yourself? Well, you can never fully prepare for a robbery. You can always think you're ready, but there's always going to be something you don't know. But there are things you can do to reduce your risk exposure. First and foremost, you need to do security checks. Test your equipment. You're paying all this money for it. Are you just letting it upload and making sure that, or not making sure of anything? Test your equipment and see if your actual alarm company is going to give you a call when they suspect that something is going wrong. We've seen comments out there about a specific alarm company. I won't name names, but it's a big one, and a lot of people use this alarm company, and it's about them not even contacting the owners when the fences or the doors are breached and that breach is being detected. So make sure, maybe do a little test. Have one of your friends come through on a late night after you closed and test to see if your alarm company is actually doing what you're paying them to do. Now, second is that you're going to want to check up on all your insurance, your general liability insurance, any kind of product insurance, anything of that manner. I asked the question to yourself, do you have enough coverage for the amount of product and equipment and stuff that's sitting inside that building, right? If you have $1 million policy and $2 million of things end up leaving the building, you might be SOL on that other $1 million. Aside from that, the amount of coverage is you want to look at the exemptions and other conditions of your policy. Now, in the insurance space, when a new or complicated situation presents itself, many insurers conditionally accept coverage under reservation of rights. Now, what does this mean? It means that insurers are not quite sure whether the coverage should be available in any particular situation, but they're going to accept responsibility for the insurance claim subject to further investigation. So make sure you're doing your due diligence ahead of time and not after something terrible happens, like an unplanned robbery. I mean, there's never a planned robbery. Hopefully you're not robbing your own place, but make sure you're taking the time. I know this is like unsexy, unfun stuff, but it's even more unfun to be in a bad financial position and no recourse or no way to pull yourself out of that situation. Again, drop any questions you have in the chat. I want to make sure that we get to any questions. I haven't been here for quite some time. If you have any, like any kind of questions about the cannabis industry, drop them in. I'd love to answer your questions. Lawrence, it's good to see you. Good to see everybody here. Life is good. All right, so let's go ahead to the I have 4 updates here for the finance and M&A of the past, 3-4 weeks here. Biggest one, I think, is from GreenGrowth CPAs, to be honest. It's our CFO survey. Last week, we released the industry's first CFO survey, and this is a 22-page report that analyzes the business and market data from 75 cannabis industry, actually more than 75 cannabis industry CFOs, CEOs, founders, controllers, and other financial leaders in 20 markets across the entire United States. We address topics including their perspective on the cannabis business environment, their progress in recovering from the pandemic, their outlook on raising capital, and how the administration or current administration is impacting the industry. Now, a few notable highlights. I would love for you to download the full report, go to our website and check it. But again, some notable highlights. It's almost a little bit over 70% of cannabis operators feel that the cannabis business environment is improving, but that's everybody. But compare that to only 28% of cultivators agree that the cannabis business environment is improving. Now, only 18.2% of operators are stronger financially today than they were before the pandemic. It's not a lot, right? Most people, over 80%, are, impaired because of the pandemic. I mean, delivery crushed it this year. They did a great job. That's one of the biggest expansions this year. But another one here is that 79% of operators are planning on raising capital, and nearly 20% of them are going to go through IPO, RTO, going public in a transaction like that. I'll leave that there. But again, go to our website, greengrowthcpas.com, click on the link to download your copy of the CFO survey, go through it, and then reply back to the email that sends you the survey and get in contact with our team, see how we can help you out going forward. Now, the second update here is that this is probably the most awesome thing I've heard in the past 30 days. New Mexico approves public financing for cannabis businesses. Now, what this means is that New Mexico, the state of New Mexico, is going to provide business loans of up to $250,000 towards small-scale cannabis businesses in an effort to provide economic opportunity to communities that were hit hard by the past criminal enforcement of cannabis laws. Essentially, if you were impaired by the war on drugs, they're offering these type of loans out to people. Now, the Regulation and Licensing Department announced that the loan program is going to be moving forward after the panel has approved it this month. Now, the New Mexico Finance Authority is planning for a whole overall $5 million line of credit for cannabis entrepreneurs, with an estimation of the average loan being about $100,000. And the application process is expected to open in February. So if you need help with pro forma financial statements for your New Mexico cannabis business, then please reach out to us. Give us a call, 800-674-9050, or go to the website, fill the form out, and one of our team members will reach out to you, chat with you, see how we can help you out. Now, the loans will be available for qualified cannabis micro businesses that are licensed to cultivate and sell up to 200 plants in a single location. A micro business essentially is a seed to sale, micro operator. They can do everything. They don't have to go get 7 licenses for this. They can do it top to bottom, seed to sale. Now, why is this important? It's obvious, hey, everybody likes to get money, but what this is doing is showing that New Mexico is thinking beyond the basic market cycles. We can't just let these operators fend for themselves and get screwed over on these deals from big capital investors who are just going to kind of leave them out. So this is aligning the incentives of the cities, the states, and the business operators. Essentially, if you want your loan paid back, Mr. or Mrs. State Legislator, then don't tax the heck out of us and actually support this fledgling industry. It's nice to see a team effort from governments and operators coming together to find a solution and build something that the people, the citizens, are demanding. The citizens want a seamless, smooth, naturally growing cannabis industry. So this is a beautiful thing, and this makes me very happy to see legislators move in this direction here. Now, another one, the third update here is going to be that Visa is warning against cashless ATMs. Now, what is a cashless ATM? Well, let me step back. What happened? Visa recently issued a compliance notice out to customers saying, hey, make sure that you're using your cashless ATM in the right way for the right industries. Don't try to skirt any regulations. Now, cashless ATMs are POS devices that essentially mimic a standalone ATM, but there is no cash actually given to the cash holder. Instead, devices are used to purchase transactions, which are then miscoded as ATM cash distributions or disbursements. Purchase amounts are often rounded up to appear like it's actually a cash disbursement. It's not going to be $47.21. It's going to be $50 or $60. An example, again, $45 for a cannabis purchase. Maybe you buy a couple grams. The business is going to round that up to $60 and then charge the $45 to themselves. They'll take that cash and they'll give you $15 back out of their till. This is a big no-no. You cannot do this as a cannabis business. Now, the memo that they sent out doesn't mention cannabis specifically, but it's obvious. We see people talk about this all the time. They talk about it freely on Facebook, LinkedIn, other groups that, hey, sign up for our cashless ATM. You cannot do this. Now, we know it's very unfair for Visa that they don't allow cannabis transactions, but we have to be very understanding that they own the rails. They built the infrastructure, and they are held to an extremely high, strict accountability by the federal government and financial management entities to make sure that they don't allow the facilitation and aiding and abetting in a criminal organization, essentially. You can't just break the rules that you agree to, right? When you sign up for this cashless ATM, there's probably a master license agreement or a user agreement. You can't just break those rules and be unhappy when you get shut down. Or worse, have some type of legal action taken against you personally or your business. Now, this is essentially one of the biggest reasons why we need the Safe Banking Act to pass. We'll get to that later, but it didn't pass. You know that. But until then, know that you're playing with fire if you're doing cashless ATMs in this way. Now, the last one here, the Cannabis Safe Banking Act was not included in the National Defense Authorization Act. The Democrats specifically pulled it. Okay, this wasn't like a red line by the Republicans saying no. The Dems pulled it, and essentially, from what we are understanding here, they're scared that some type of incremental change in the industry will delay a larger legalization bill with these broad social terms and social benefits built into it. Now, it appears that the Dems would rather keep the current legal market, including social equity operators, at risk of being robbed or audits by the IRS and other tax agencies and issues with tracking the cash and a myriad of other issues that come with being unbanked. You have to understand, rich, large cannabis corporations have no problem getting bank accounts. It's the smaller operators that are being hurt, people that have less than $5 million, that have less than $1 million. It's those smaller operators that are being hurt by not passing some type of incremental banking. It's those that are at the beginning of their cannabis journey that are affected by this. And it's people who have their personal accounts closed because it's been touched by a cannabis banking account with a deposit or this or that. Now, what you may have heard is that some may argue that, this is helping big banks. The Safe Banking Act is helping the big banks. They're going to get richer off of our business. But yeah, I agree. They're going to make some money off deposits and fees on transactions. But this Safe Banking Act is not going to benefit the banks as much as it's going to benefit these smaller cannabis operators. The safety, minimally the safety, not even the ease of operating a business, the safety of it. This is such a small amount of money to the banks, right? The cannabis industry is like a $30 billion industry. Amazon does that in 1 month, just Amazon, one company. So this is not going to make the banks rich. But legislators could potentially bring it back next year with a little bit of modifications, and they may need to come back with a little bit more robust of a bill. Who knows? Maybe it gets tucked into some kind of omnibus legislation, something with some kind of stimulus or defense bill as well. But one thing I wanted to point out, that as industry participants, it appears that legislators are not listening to us, right? We scream our heads off, we make videos, we write letters to our Congress people, we call them, we email them. The solutions seem obvious, but at the same time, it appears that, again, these legislators don't listen. But understand, they are hearing you. They hear this stuff. They just cannot focus on something like cannabis. Again, we are only a small industry, and we're only putting like $20 or $30 million into lobbying for cannabis efforts compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that's coming for pharma, food, all these other kinds of industries. And legislators, like it or not, are beholden to their donors once they're in office. So we don't have a big enough market yet, and we don't have a big enough lobby yet to make change. Again, that's a yet, but stay positive, but be practical with your expectations. And I'm going to get into kind of some of the bigger, awesome things that could be going on for 2022 about this cannabis banking. Now, lastly, let's go ahead and get into here with 2 updates on licensing and regulation. Let me check and see if there's any questions in here. Yeah, any questions, drop them into the chat here, and we can get into those on either topics I'm covering now, or it could be on questions you have for your specific business. And I'll do the best that I can to answer those questions. Now, licensing and regulations. There's not any huge news, but I wanted to bring up, 2 pieces of news that are kind of cool. National legalization efforts. It's not just the US out there that's trying to push this. Malta has essentially become the first country in Europe to legalize the cultivation and consumption for cannabis for recreational use. It's likely going to be signed into law by the end of this week. That is very, very, very big. Now, again, a second part of that is that Germany is moving on the path to legalization as well, but it's going to take a while. So 2 big things here. Many other countries are moving faster than we are at addressing the illegal nature of cannabis. And hopefully we don't lose our stance. And I don't believe we're going to lose our stance that we are the kind of cannabis travel destination, but you can move it faster if you just open up these kind of access points for everybody and lower the bar to entry and reduce the licensing costs. Now, the second update on licensing and regulations is that some states and cities are still saying no to cannabis, explicitly saying no. Number 1, South Dakota Supreme Court says no to cannabis. The South Dakota Supreme Court ruled that the voice of its people, who voted for favoring legal adult use cannabis by a majority of over 54% last November, was not enough to influence public policy. They had a hearing on Amendment A in April, and they came back with their decision at the end of November. The Supreme Court did, and the 5-justice court issued a final decision again on November 24th, which pretty much said that it was an unconstitutional ballot initiative. Now, I don't know too much about the legislation process and what this is going to be and how this is going to shake out and what the next steps are, but this is very indicative that cannabis is a generational issue. This is very much a generational issue. There is no like, oh, it's killing people kind of thing. This is not hurting people. No one has ever died from cannabis use, right? Nancy Reagan did a really, really, really good job with her just say no policy, such that decades later, politicians and courts are continuing to stay static on their stance on cannabis. This is disheartening to see that the people are not being listened to. The people asked for it. There's a technicality on like, hey, you can only do this or that on a ballot initiative. That should have been brought up. There was hundreds of thousands of signatures. Someone should have seen that this was an unconstitutional initiative and bent it in a way that this could pass, but they didn't, and here we are. Now, building on that, I really, 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 really want to see that, or I want to talk about New York. I think that's going to be the biggest blockbuster next year is when New York turns on. But what you're seeing in New York is that 400 cities are saying no to pot sales in New York. We saw the same thing in California. I think it was like 1/3 or 2/3 of the cities and municipalities said, no, we don't want any retailers. And those created what we call cannabis deserts. Now, again, let's just read some here. More than 400 towns and villages across New York have opted to block out legal local cannabis dispensary and consumption lounges as a statewide deadline nears, with many officials deciding to stay out of the upcoming market. Now, these localities cannot ban legalized possession. As a consumer, if you're in New York, you can have the cannabis, but they're not going to allow companies to operate, like to own, like to have land in there with their licenses. Who knows? They may even try to limit delivery services as well. We saw that some cities were trying to stop that in California. I don't think that's going to pass, but we'll see how that goes. Now, with 3 weeks left, or 2 weeks left, essentially now here, a quarter of New York's towns and 31% of the villages have voted to become essentially dry. Now, why is this important? Why are we talking about this? If you're not in that state, what does it matter? Legislators, if you're listening, you need to understand something. These sales will happen with or without your blessing. It's just going to happen. It's happening now. People are buying and consuming and selling and trading and growing and manufacturing cannabis in your city. It's just not legal, but it's happening. The question is, do you want your citizens to get safe, regulated product that you can collect tax revenue on? Or do you want to just do business as usual and keep putting your citizens at risk and pushing out the next wave of business revitalization? Hey, the ball is in your court, regulators, and be very thoughtful about how you approach this. I understand it can be a touchy and sensitive topic, but do you want to be on the right or wrong side of history when this shakes out in 30 years? Think about your legacy. Don't just think about today. All right. Now, that's all the notable highlights from this past month. Again, I'll check here, see if you have any questions. If you have any other things, drop them in. The next thing we're going to get into is the main 2021 highlights. I really want to do some reflection on here. Lauren says, cashless ATMs topic. The cashless ATM people say, nothing to see here. Visa and MasterCard bark every year. Providers with alternative solutions say fines are imminent. Hey, who knows how it's really going to play out, but I know that if I owned a cannabis business, I would do everything as much as I could by the book. Now, I know that means putting yourself at potentially a disadvantage when someone else is taking card, and people that want to use their card will go to there. But hey, get an ATM. Do the best you can. Don't put yourself in compliance risk. But hey, everyone has their own risk tolerance. Do it on a case-by-case basis. And if you have questions or need other solutions, then reach out to us, see what we can do. We've helped our clients with different kind of avenues of processing and payment collection and things. So reach out to us, see if we can help you out with that. All right, the main meat here. So we've gone for about 30 minutes here. Thank you for sticking around up to this point. let's do a quick recap of 2021, pat ourselves on the back. Good time to reflect, take stock in our wins, and understand where the friction lies in the industry, because 1 year in cannabis seems like a decade in any other traditional industry. So our big win in 2021 was we have massive, massive progress at the state level. There's 5 new adult use states: New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, New Mexico, and Virginia. 15 new medical states, dozens of additional, I think it's like 50 different additional cannabis reform laws throughout the entire country as well. And it will take a significant amount of time to create the regulatory frameworks and implement these statewide programs, but it's well worth the wait. This progress has helped actually strengthen that legalization wave, and it makes it increasingly difficult for the other states to sit on the sidelines and not help their citizens come into the 2022. Come on now, let's get this going here. Jump in. If you want to be, left behind, be left behind. But our big win, states are stepping up and legalizing. Another big one here, and I know this is going to get maybe mixed reviews here, is that large corporations, large entities, large business interests have shown cannabis-friendly attitudes. Well, a few examples. In June, Amazon changed its employee cannabis policy and publicly supported the MORE Act. On that statement, Amazon stock went up. Other US-listed cannabis companies rose on that same news as well. In July, Apple reversed its policy banning cannabis-related apps from the App Store. Now Ease and Caliva, those delivery apps, can be downloaded easily and not through some API kind of thing where you download from their website. Dozens more people have jumped in, Weedmaps and Leafly, to name a few. And throughout the year, major sports leagues have changed their stance on cannabis. I think many people saw the Olympics with Sha'Carri Richardson being banned from competition due to testing positive for THC. But in September, the World Anti-Doping Agency announced that they were going to reconsider cannabis as a banned substance for cannabis being on the banned substance list for the Olympics, following a request by a number of stakeholders. Now, this policy won't change until after 2022, but it's great. It's great to see this kind of movement in it. The UFC, they no longer punish athletes for testing positive for THC. The NFL loosened their restrictions on cannabis use. The MLB removed cannabis from its banned substances. And the NBA will continue to not test for cannabis for at least another season. And a big M&A deal that maybe it kind of went under the radar. I had to search for it. 2 days ago, Pfizer just purchased Arena, which is a pharma company, for almost $7 billion. And they're a biotech company with one segment of their business focused on cannabinoid type therapeutics. Now, I understand some people don't like big business. They think Amazon is the devil. I can sympathize with that and understand that. But these large corporations and business interests could be the key to getting things moving in regards to legalization, or at least some type of targeted legislation to give us some hope for the macro movement. Now, these corporations, they exert pressure through lobbies on the governments all the time to have their interests accommodated for. So big business catalyzes change. These businesses may become our best friends in Washington in 2022. It's been great to see what has happened in 2021. Let's check here to see if there's any kind of stuff here. All right, cool. Drew, I'll get to your question in a moment here. One sec. All right, so another thing about 2021 is that clear market cycles have begun to appear. And what that means is that we've had legal cannabis for decades, but this adult use has been around for 5, 6, 7, 8 years now. And we see what happens and how it plays out again and again in each new state that turns on, okay, and gets licensing and opens up. Investors and businesses at the beginning, they get excited, the money pours in, and they're very, very quick to get started. And in those earlier years, most operators just saw all the money and not the tax and the legal issues ahead that would require an insane amount of capital to combat. Then you get this kind of intense competition and eventually a collapse in that market, a consolidation in that market, and big money comes in and takes over that market, and small operators get crushed. Now, hopefully, this at some time begins to level off and markets get like a more sustained, better, healthy growth to them. But what you're seeing, California, Oklahoma, they're in the thick of it right now. Oregon, they're in the thick of it right now. They're growing too much cannabis, and there's swaths of illegal grows out competing them and just flooding the market, crushing these prices, especially when you have a tax that's based per pound. When the price goes down, the percentage of that tax increases wildly. So if you have a 1% tax and prices go down 75%, it's now a 4% tax on those pounds. Now, these taxes are crushing the illegal market and again, creating a legal and illegal market, a two-market system. The new states and their regulators really need to take a stone cold, sobering look at how this has all happened in other legal states and make sure they do not repeat these same mistakes themselves. It'd be great to see things like new and more accommodating tax structures or more licensing plans with wider access and more micro business licenses to support smaller operators and not just give up the entire house to the MSOs that are going to, essentially take everything away from the smaller operators. And it'd be great to see reduced fees for licensing and compliance, but we'll see. We'll see. That's kind of what has happened so far. And then lastly, just kind of what has happened macro overall in 2021. The federal government efforts have really come to a pause and a slowdown. Democratic legislators have been pushing an all or nothing type cannabis legislation, combining banking, legalizing, and social equity matters all into one large bill. Now, something like this large, multifaceted, has no way in passing in the current political climate that we have right now. It's not a bad idea to get everything across in the finish line at once. But again, with this political climate, it's impractical to put everything into one bill. Now, the Safe Banking Act had been approved multiple times by the House, and it keeps getting killed at the 11th hour. You also have the States Reform Act. There's a Republican, Nancy Mace from South Carolina. She has introduced a bill for cannabis legalization. Yes, a Republican has pushed a bill for cannabis legalization. It has aspects like expungement of federal convictions of nonviolent cases, providing a framework for federal legalization, including rescheduling, and enforcement in states to allow the sale of cannabis, letting them figure it out, the states figure it out. Now, look, it likely won't pass in its form now, but it's a signal that this is not just, the Democrats' thing to own. It's a generational issue. It's a social issue. It's an issue that everyone needs to come together for. And be thoughtful, Republicans could come in and steal this platform pillar in the next election cycle. It has huge support from younger and older voters alike. So who knows? You also have out there the CAOA, the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act. There's many kinds of bills out there. We'll see how they progress. But I want you to understand, most of these bills that get put out there for cannabis, they're for press releases. There's no real teeth to them. They know they're not going to pass in this form. There's no bite with the bark on that publication. And this is why when we see companies like Amazon putting their hands in the air and saying, we're going to stop participating in this war on drugs, we see opportunities for macro change. And I'm not saying that I want Amazon to come in and save the day, but they and other large organizations like them may be on our side. But we need to make sure that we don't completely lose our grassroots culture and the legacy market that brought us to this beautiful point that we are today. Small cannabis business, craft cannabis businesses are good for the nation. They're good for the people. They're good for the industry, and they're great for the consumers. All right, so that's kind of a look at what has happened in 2021. Again, big things here. We have huge state level wins. We have big corporations coming in for support. We have clear market cycles and how things will play out. And we saw what happened with the federal. Now, let's jump in and get to some questions real quick. All right, Drew says, okay, well, I have a question for everybody in here. I'm 18 and me and my friends have a dream on opening a shop. What do I need besides money? Like, what do I go to college for and stuff like that? Beautiful. It's a good question. Now, we've written extensively on what you need to do. I think I made a video on specifically what beginners need to do. But first and foremost, get involved in your local cannabis community. Make sure you go to these, meetup groups in your local area. Make sure you're getting involved in political action in your area, down to the local, like your city legislator. Go to the meetings, involve yourself, show your face, know what's going on. Aside from that, build a team that has a multidisciplinary look at cannabis. Not everybody can be the CEO. You're going to need a marketer. You're going to need an operations person. You're going to need someone who's great with product. You're going to need someone who does all these things. Building a team is very, very important. And I'm going to address the elephant in the room. It takes a ton of money to get in with cannabis. Depending on your market, like Oklahoma, much cheaper. But again, the market is flooded. Now you look at something like California, it's $1 million minimum to get a dispensary. So you're going to either need to have friends that have money, or you're going to need to raise the money on your own, whether through friends and family, crush it on crypto or something. You're going to need to figure that out. And then aside from that, I would say go work at cannabis businesses, learn the industry, learn the ins and outs, learn the nuances, learn how things work, learn how a new shop goes through all the growing pains, so that when you open your shop, Drew, you're not experiencing all these growing pains for the first time. You come in with some type of context that, hey, I've seen this before, and this is how we have remedied it in the past. Let's test, try, see how that works. And if it doesn't work, we'll go to another solution. I'll look for the video and try to put that in here in the chat when I get a chance. But those are the main kind of things you need to do: is get involved with your local legislator, build a team, find a way to raise money, and work at a shop and get involved. You could even, volunteer at a shop if you can. And if there's no shops by you because you're in a market that doesn't have them, you're gonna have to look. Get involved in like internet groups too, LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, different kinds of groups, so you can at least stay abreast to what's going on. Also stay coming to these live streams here. We try to give as much knowledge for the beginners. All right. Nat John says here, some advice. So great advice here, probably from Nat. We'll just read it out. He would say to start running a business before you run one. Marijuana or something else. Every owner should know accounting, business basics, and I would suggest getting an associate's in accounting, then a few business classes. I agree. Nat makes a really good comment here. Go be a manager at something like a CVS. Go start your own business and see how painful it is to even start just a website that sells a digital product. There are so many things that we don't know until you get in it. And you're like, oh my goodness, I just wanted to sell some cannabis. I didn't know it was going to be this and this and this. And I had to be a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades. It's tough. So that beautiful advice there, Nat. Go get a job in another industry, or start a business in another industry so you can see kind of the ins and outs of running your own business. All right. So let's go now into an outlook for 2022. I got 7 or 8 kind of pillars here that I want to talk about. I would love to hear what you think is going to happen in 2022. So if you have a chance, drop in the chat with any predictions you may have, any thoughts, any things you want to discuss about 2022, and we'll jump into those. But first, I got to get some water. I've been talking for like 40 minutes. All right. Cool. So what to look for in 2022 for the cannabis industry? Let's address federal legalization first. And I know it's going to be a bubble popper. Federal legalization overall, big, huge passing is not coming anytime soon. And I know that may sound demoralizing and pessimistic, but people rarely, if ever, are going to change their minds. Laws don't change because of the politicians that took a stance against cannabis in the past. Saying you change your mind is a superpower. These people that are in the kind of politics and legislature right now have taken a stance of anti-cannabis. Very rarely where they're going to say, let's go ahead and just switch our minds and go for this, right? There has to be a real big good reason for it. With us being a small industry, I don't know. But cannabis criminalization is a generational issue and will go away as these older politicians rooted in history leave and new generations of politicians come in, like the AOCs of the world, these younger people that see the damage, have experienced the damage firsthand in their cities that the war on drugs did. These new people have the power to do one of two things: toe the line or change the law. And as I touched on earlier, what you're currently seeing is that this is a consolidation of social justice reforms paired with cannabis regulations. Now, this will surely slow down the process, but it's convoluting two major issues. And while, yes, they are tied very, very closely together, they also have many differences. And yes, bipartisan bills like the HOPE Act, again, which was just introduced by AOC and Dave Joyce, are 100% needed. But you may see some conservative politicians or even moderate people use expungement, which means, taking off these taking off the charges or issues that have just expunging the convictions. My bad. Expunging the convictions of these people that have been accused and sentenced in the court of law, and letting them out of jail. And people are going to say, no way, legalize the cannabis and let the criminals off the hook. No way we're going to allow that. You may see that kind of wild rhetoric coming up. But you're also seeing that many of the newer politicians are introducing these bills. There's multiple bills out there, but there's an issue with not having a united front from one side, the other side, or both sides against the issue, right? It's not Democrats versus Republicans. We can't think of it that way. We have to think of it as, the cannabis issue, and all of us need to fix it together, right? Because when you have multiple bills, you split support and you essentially kill the entire movement. So I would say is expect incremental reform more than some kind of huge overhaul in cannabis. Again, stay positive, but be practical with your expectations. Now, the next one I think you're going to see in 2022 is state legalization and regulations. New York and New Jersey are going to open their apps. They probably won't turn on the markets yet, but we expect a wave of legalization in 2022. There's going to be a lot of new states coming on. There's going to be a lot of new votes coming up. Many states, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, and Ohio all have cannabis-related initiatives on their 2022 ballot. So you're going to see some big movements in November for state legalization. Now, again, on this, another one here for 2022 is that politicians will campaign on this issue on both sides. And that may be very, very eye-opening to people who've been in this thing for a decade or if not their entire lives. Republican Rep Nancy Mace, she stuck her neck out there. She got the ball rolling and had the conversation getting started with her party potentially supporting cannabis. Now, more representatives, more senators, maybe even state and local officials are going to start to hype up the cannabis crowd. Democrats have stalled long enough on this cannabis reform, and the Republicans could steal this platform pillar right from under the Democrats. It will be very, very interesting to see who uses this platform for election or re-election. I think you're going to be surprised on who stands on this. Whether they follow through or not is not the issue, because politicians say one thing and they do another. They're going to tell you all these kinds of things to get your votes, as politicians have done time and time again. But we'll see who really sticks their neck out there for cannabis. Now, another thing you may see in 2022 is that more businesses, smaller cannabis businesses, are going to be forced to close because of taxes and penalties and fees on those taxes. There's been two big examples that we study at GreenGrowth. The number one right now is the Alaska market. Now, they've had their first shops open about 5 years ago, and many of them are struggling to survive. There are now, I think it's 56 or 57 businesses that owe collectively $1.8 million in taxes. And 9 of those businesses that owe some of those taxes are closed for good. And is a sizable portion of that money that is in fees and penalties for the overdue balances. Essentially, these people are being taxed out of business. They didn't either put that tax money aside, right? It's not like they have to come up with this extra money. Most of the money is coming from the sales tax, excise tax that's charged to the consumer. There are other taxes that the business has to pay. But what you see often is that these businesses use this tax money that they've collected as operating capital. And then when inventory doesn't turn well, they are out of operating capital and they can't pay their tax bill. Now they're in super deep. And you're also seeing the same thing play out in Nevada. There's a business there, owes $528,000 in back taxes, penalties, and interest, and they're likely going to lose their license over it. So what should 2022 bring for you? You should be investing in professional services. I know it sounds super unsexy and not fun, and you need to get the next new product, but it's necessary so you don't shoot yourself in the foot. Financial hygiene is necessary for success in the cannabis industry. There are things you don't know that you don't know until you get into the operational arena, opening up and actually doing business. There is hyper competition. Everyone that is in cannabis likes cannabis. They want to start a business in cannabis. They want to start a dispensary. They want licenses. They want more products. There's lower prices being pushed down because so much cannabis is being grown. There's smaller compressed margins. But there are these more sophisticated cannabis operators, teams of operators from CPG companies and big business that know how to methodically start and develop businesses in emerging industries and especially emerging markets. These mom and pop shops, these regular operators that have less than $5 million, they don't stand a chance on certain aspects such as scaling of the scale of the business or access to capital. But if you're a cannabis operator, it's smaller, you can surely button up your compliance on taxes, fees, licenses, and crush it in that local market. Help the local people and the government, get them on your side, and this can help set you up for an acquisition by major players because you're playing the big boy game or the big girl game. Financial management is going to be critical in 2022 to keep up with these deep-pocketed MSOs, experienced operators that have these huge war chests of money. All right, let's jump in here. I want to see any other questions or comments. Cool. Mad Note says, what about Alaska Chief? You missed one. I don't know what that means specifically. Mad Notes, drop in specifically what your question is. Elizabeth here, she asks, can I grow cannabis as a company but not sell the cannabis due to selling the weed? Selling the weed, the taxes are too high then. It's a corporate trap. Okay, so here. So Elizabeth is bringing up a thing. So what she's asking essentially is, can you have a cannabis business that doesn't sell cannabis but gives it away for free? You see this in the ticket industry. You buy a pack of pencils, like a number 2 pencils for $700 and it comes with 2 free tickets to a Drake concert. You cannot do that. I'm sure that there's probably been some type of case law out there, a precedent that's been set. I would say that you probably don't want to be doing that. It would probably be considered, illegal trafficking. A pound is going to, I think, be more than what is considered personal use. You'll be deemed a commercial cannabis business, an unlicensed commercial cannabis business. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do the, I don't know what the specific regulations for each city and state are on personal use and doing the patient kind of route. Like in Michigan here, there are people that have 72 plants or some kind of number of plants that allow them to grow in a house in what it seems to be a commercial scale and helping out patients. Where that cannabis goes is not to be said or to be asked about, but there are many people out there that are doing that. But if you have a specific question on a specific environment, location or environment, please reach out to us. Go to the website. It's right here. Go to that website or give us a call. And let's see how we can help you out. Maybe there are some creative ways that we can figure this out for you. But in the form that you placed it, sell a TV and get cannabis for free, that's likely a no-go on there. All right. Now I want to get to the last few things. There's 3 or 4 things I want to get on, things to look out for 2022. I think that in 2022, we are going to have some of the largest M&A deals that are going to surprise the industry. I got on here in the early 2020, and I think even in late 2020, talking about the collapse and consolidation of the cannabis industry. And that has played out in some form or fashion. You're seeing what's happening in Oklahoma with so many businesses having to close down. You're seeing it in every state, not just Oklahoma. I don't want to pick on Oklahoma. I don't want to boost them up either. It's a beautiful market, great opportunity. It's a great experiment, but you're seeing it in California. You're seeing it in Oregon. You're seeing it in other legalized states that are having this collapse and consolidation. But I think you're going to see a big pump of huge M&A deals because stocks have slumped in 2021, leading to these lower stock prices, which makes the deals even that much more attractive for investors, and it makes it attractive for these big companies to partner up essentially. If you can't get it all done by yourself as one big business, why not buy groups that have great operations with localized industry knowledge? You can add to your bottom line with an M&A instead of trying to squeeze more juice out of your current operations. For example, it has already happened. At the later half of this year, Harborside, one of the greatest, most groundbreaking cannabis dispensaries out there. Steve DeAngelo did great with bringing kind of, the father of legalized cannabis. They had an M&A deal. They bought Urban Leaf, which is a retailer in Southern California, and Loud Pack, which is a cultivator, manufacturer, and distributor. It was a $77 million debt financing deal. So the money is obviously there for these strategic deals. And Edge Schmaltz from Urban Leaf is going to take over as the CEO of this new company, this new big conglomerate. Is no longer Harborside. It's now called State House Holdings. So I think you're going to see more of these happen, these very big alliances by big companies. They're called business combinations, not just asset sales, but bringing two operations fully together under a new parent company. I think targets to watch out for are even Harborside or State House Holdings. They may start to do big deals. Planet 13, that big dispensary in Las Vegas, Swayze, and Forefront Ventures. I think you see some really big moves with them. And I think it's what Canopy Growth is sitting on like $500 million. They got last year. Their stock has been slumping. They may end up going into this to put that money into action. So 2022, watch for big M&A deals. Another one here for 2022, let's address some things about products, right? And there's always new, beautiful products coming out. I think I was watching one of our live streams last week and with ArcView, and they brought up this thing called dog walker joints, right? The current state of the pandemic has brought the people don't want to bring a big joint to a party and pass that joint around. Ew, right? I don't know if I'm going to want to do that, but people are like, here's a 5-pack. Everybody gets their own joint. Right? This is a macro movement in our sentiment about how we feel about other people and their kind of germ setup that has pushed a new product to high purchases. So with these kind of products going forward, what are we going to see for 2022? Well, that dog walker joint, that's what has happened. But what is coming for 2022? Microdose or low dose cannabis is going to continue to shine. You're getting moms, you're getting dads, you're getting grandparents, you're getting people that run businesses that are using cannabis daily. They cannot take a 20 milligram, edible pill, smoke a fatty. They cannot do that. They're going to need something smaller, but they still want this kind of level of effects to it. So I think microdose and low dose cannabis, you're going to see a lot more of that. Lower THC, right? When you see now, like people get 35%, 38%, huge THC because people want to get stoned, bro. Well, guess what? I don't think that's going to always be the case. A new cannabis consumer is rushing in. And yes, heavy users, if you're a CPG brand, if you've worked in CPG, you know that the top 10% of your consumers, your heavy users, bring in a lot of your money. But that is for an industry that is very mature. What we're seeing now is all the new patients are really driving all of this revenue, right? It's not legacy people that are like, I'm not going to buy from my homie Frank anymore, or my friend that grows. I'm going to go to this legal shop and spend 50% more on taxed cannabis because I know it doesn't have heavy metals in it. It's not the people that are primarily going to these shops. It's the people that are new to cannabis, essentially. So I think you see lower THC become popular or more popular. In 2022, I think you're going to see cannabis beverages have their day in the sun. Canadian cannabis company Tilray just acquired a Colorado distillery for almost $103 million, right? Things are improving. Cold chain logistics are improving. Flavors are improving. Ingredients are improving. Form factor is improving. Lounges are opening up. And these lounges open up. Jean from ArcView, she said, you can't just, it's illegal to smoke indoors. And I think almost across the country, I believe it's across the country. But, when I was a kid, when you go to a restaurant, they say, all right, hey, family of 4, do you want to do smoking or non-smoking section? They don't do that anymore. You can't go smoke a joint indoors anymore. It's got to have some type of 3 walls and no ceiling kind of setup. At any rate, beverages are going to have their day in the sun because these lounges are becoming more and more popular. And lastly, for the products here, I think Delta 8 THC is still going to be, controversial. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I've been out of this kind of space for a bit of time. But I think Delta 8 is going to still continue to be something important to talk about. I believe it counts as hemp, as a hemp product, and can be produced from hemp as long as it doesn't contain Delta 9 THC. But CBD shops are depending on this Delta 8 to stay alive. If they don't have Delta 8, they will not stay alive. CBD shops, they're done for, you know. In the most part, it might be a product at a regular Wild Bill's tobacco or at your corner liquor store, but I don't see it being, they can't survive without having those products out there. Let's jump into the chat, see if there's anything else. All right. So someone asked here, where do you see the wholesale cannabis prices in California? They are going, so where do I see them going? Down. There's more people, there's more producers producing more cannabis, producing better cannabis. The margins are compressed. They're getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Now, who knows how that's going to actually work out, but I think you're going to see a lot of compression in the prices here. It's been happening. It's going down. It may level out. I know some people that are selling cannabis for $300 a pound, $500 a pound. They can't get rid of it. And as I brought up earlier, we saw very, very clearly now these kind of market cycles. How do things play out? And here's how it plays out. There's this thing called Croptober, and it just crushes the prices. It's happening in Michigan. These indoor grows are getting killed because people are growing really good outdoor cannabis. So that's kind of where I see it. I mean, check into our cannabis benchmarks meeting. There's a spot price we talk about and things of that nature. There's the spot price on different websites, but more licenses means more cannabis. And if you don't have that huge bump in the amount of consumers, you're going to see compressed margins and compressed prices. Brandy says, is it best to get out or stay in the game for mom and pop shops holding licenses but are non-operational in oversaturated markets? What's the competitive edge? The competitive edge, I believe, for mom and pop shops, look, if you're making money and you can stay afloat, stay in the game, especially if you're in an area that has limited licenses. If it's a unlimited license place like an Oklahoma, you're gonna be in trouble probably, because any person can come get a license as long as they're a citizen or resident and they've got the $10,000. It's really easy. Anybody can get one of those now. So it depends on if you're a limited license state. That's the big thing, if you should stay or go. And then your competitive edge is running great operations, tight operations, becoming very tight with your consumers and making sure that if a big shop like Cookies comes in and buys one of your competitors, that you still have the loyalty of your consumers. Taking the time to educate. Can you also educate your consumer on what are the good products, doing real needs analysis on these people and seeing what are you really helping them with. Also, are there other ways to make money on your space? Do you have a big parcel of land that you could throw potentially events in the summertime or kind of community things? Or can you repurpose for nights? Can you throw concerts? I don't know. Other ways to make money could be your competitive advantage. When you're a small startup, you have this thing called agility and being nimble in things. You can do things in 6 hours that would take another company 6 months to do. So that would be some of the competitive advantages that I would think on that end as a small mom and pop shop. John Wayne 420, oh man, you've been here for since the beginning. I've been doing this. I'm glad this information is helpful for you. Jay Hammond says, stay in, hold your business opportunity and expand to another state will come along. Yeah, I mean, don't give up. If you love this business and it's at least paying the bills and not dragging your net worth down consistently, stay in it, right? You can fight for yourself and continue to work forward. And look, if you are considering selling your cannabis business, reach out to us. People call us and reach out to us all the time. They want to buy cannabis businesses. So if you're considering selling, reach out to us. Go to our website, fill out the form, or give us a call, and we'll try to pair you with the person that can buy your business and get you an exit, and maybe you go back at it in a different state. All right, let's go ahead and let's do one more thing here. Sharon from Denali says, run from Oklahoma. All my dispensary clients are crashing right now. Look, it was a really good experiment in Oklahoma to have the unlimited license, very low threshold. I actually think it was one of the greatest here, let me step back. low license fees and unlimited license was a really good kind of move to be a social equity. Anybody could open up one of these type of businesses. It gave access to the industry for the average person. You see cities like Los Angeles who have social equity, but you still need to come up with $1 million. What does that mean? That means you have to get in bed with people who do not have your best interests at heart, like a big cannabis company. And some people will be like, oh, it's fine. I don't mind partnering with them. I at least got my cannabis business. But what you're seeing in those deals is that it's pretty much a front. That person who got the license is now only getting $100,000 a year salary. They're not even running their own business. They have no claims to profits, none of that. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not the be all tell all, but Oklahoma was a good experiment. We'll see how it plays out. There will be a collapse. You can't have 3 dispensaries in one strip mall. I saw it when I was there. And I think it's really cool that there's a lot of support from everyone in that state for it. But we'll see how it finally fully plays out. All right. Last thing here, 2 more things here on what to look for in 2022. I think you're going to see the importance of micro biz licenses. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but California, Massachusetts, and Michigan have micro biz licenses. A micro biz license is essentially you can grow it, manufacture and work on it, distribute it, as well as sell it to the retail customer, whether a storefront, and sometimes they also offer non-storefront retail, which is also known as delivery. Now, these are essential to keeping the market diverse and not let these large, deep pocket MSOs come in and dominate and crush these local markets and crush these mom and pop shops. These micro biz licenses, they usually cost less than buying all the individual licenses. It's a lot less headache. You're only renewing 1 license instead of working on 3 or 4. You also don't have to deal with multiple jurisdictions because some people may have to grow in the high desert in California, process there, bring their distribution all the way out to the retailer in San Diego and in California. It becomes just a big headache. So I think these micro biz licenses are going to be more of the spotlight for 2022. In new recreational states that haven't yet issued licenses but have developed micro businesses or craft grower programs include Connecticut, Illinois, New Mexico, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, and Virginia. So I think 2022 will be the year of the microbiz. I hope that it works out, but microbiz doesn't just mean that it's only going to be a mom and pop. When you see New York, you see these big companies are going to get the microbiz licenses as well. So, do what you can to get in there. There's still going to always be these large interests, but do your best to get your microbiz license. And the last one here, 2022, and I brought this up at the end of last year too, but I'm thinking about it more and more. I think IP is going to become even more important. You're seeing so many brands rush into the industry, into the marketplace, and they're pretty much appropriating these bigger brands. Like they do things that are kind of playing off the word Cheetos or the packaging of Cheetos or the packaging of Nerds ropes, or they're using memes as marketing materials. There's a company out there that's getting sued by Sacha Baron Cohen, and they had a picture of Borat, which is a copyrighted character or brand, I don't forget, I think it's a copyrighted character. They use it to support their business and their marketing. You cannot do that. So I think that you're going to see more of this. I think you're going to see a lot of licensing of genetics, cookie licenses of genetics. Aurora Cannabis has just launched a genetics licensing cannabis program. I think you're going to see it. Genetics, brand marks, processes, these will all become bigger topics as the value of these assets increases dramatically across the US and abroad. So those are the kind of things to look out for in 2022 for the cannabis industry. If you have any other thoughts, let's go ahead. I'll jump into the chat here and see if anybody else has anything, but I appreciate you sitting around. We've got a lot of people in here. We've been on here for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Thank you for sticking around. Let's jump into some questions here. All right, Elizabeth says she wants to sell her wild landrace seeds. Selling seeds is something you have to look into. I'm not sure if you can or cannot do that in your state, reach out to us if you need help with that. And Mad Note says, what about buying from another state? What's the regulations on crossing state lines? Okay, there's no such thing as interstate cannabis commerce, not yet. That's federal drug trafficking. The DEA will be at your front door asking where you've been at, what you're doing, where's your money at. And if the DEA can't get any information out of you, they'll just sic the IRS on you. That's a little thing that most people don't know, is that the IRS is the DEA's watchdog. They'll just go into you and it's a miserable, miserable experience to deal with the IRS on this kind of issue. But at any rate, be thoughtful on, don't do interstate drug trafficking. That is what that is called, and don't do it. It's not there yet. Yep. And then Elizabeth says she wished she would have branded her cat piss seeds back in 2014 when she sent them to grow for vets. Yeah, I mean, look, lots of things coming up, lots of opportunities, lots of missed opportunities, but lots of new opportunities coming as well. Nothing to worry about. There's always going to be opportunity. I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again. Alcohol was going through prohibition in the 30s, I believe, right? So that's 90 years ago. Big, big, big brands have been built in the past 10 years in alcohol. There's never going to be a window, a green rush, and like you have to launch your cannabis company now, or you're never going to get in the industry. This is not how this works. It will not work like that. You can start a cannabis company in 25 years, crush it, and do very, very well. So I would not worry about, the missed opportunities. Everybody's got these missed opportunities. And I wish you much success in your future endeavors and opportunities. But, don't worry too much about it. Like an example of an alcohol brand that did very well was Casamigos Tequila. 90 years after Prohibition, 80 years after Prohibition, they sell for $1 billion. Look at White Claw. This company was a nothing 5 years ago, and it's like a meme now. It has become ubiquitous in certain cultures, in certain kind of demographics, So, don't worry too much about the things that have happened in the past. Look towards the future. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. I just want to thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for supporting GreenGrowth CPAs over the past year. I hope that the content that we've presented today and throughout the years has been helpful to you. If you have any questions or you need any help with your cannabis business, then please reach out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. It's been my pleasure with you to be here today with you. Thank you again for your support. Have a beautiful rest of your 2021. I wish you much success. Crush it. And if you need help,